Hey guys, Nick here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a topic that I get comments about all the time, and that is the difference between Davinci Resolve 16 and Davinci Resolve 16 Studio, so the paid version. Because as we all know, and probably love as well, is that Davinci Resolve 16 is free to download and use at your discretion. You can use it on whatever project you want with pretty much no catches. And I do get a lot of comments about, should they pay the upgrade price? And the upgrade price sort of fluctuates depending on where you look. You can get some deals, but you're talking like $300 to $400 depending. And obviously depending on where you are in the world. So this video is going to cover exactly, it's going to answer that question. Should you upgrade to Davinci Resolve 16 Studio? And I just want to quick disclaimer, what you're not going to get in this video is me going over all the individual aspects of, every little nitty gritty bits of differences between the two. More a really clear-cut understanding between them. So with that all done, let's get into it. Should you upgrade and purchase Davinci Resolve 16 Studio? The real fast answer is no, to be honest. So you can pretty much end that video now and you're done. You don't have to worry about it. If you want to know why, keep watching. So the reason you don't really need to upgrade is simple. You can pretty much achieve 99% of things, general video editing, professional video editing, with the free version of Davinci Resolve 16. Studio definitely gives you more flexibility, more options, and I'm going to cover the ones that are probably the most important, and if any of these sort of ring true to you, then you know you need to upgrade. But I would say that a majority of people out there, if you've got a YouTube channel or you're like a freelance videographer, no, you really don't need to upgrade. I do have the Studio version. That's because I do these tutorials, and sometimes that does involve having to dive deeper into some of the effects that are only available on the Studio version. That's just me. So the main differences that is going to matter to you guys as content creators, videographers, video editors is that, well, I think the biggest one is Davinci Resolve 16 Studio, let's just call it the Studio version from now on, has GPU hardware acceleration throughout the software, which means that things are just going to be a lot smoother, a lot easier to edit. The free version does not have that. And so what GPU acceleration does is basically take all the decoding of the video footage and all the handling of these effects and takes it from the CPU and puts it on the GPU, which is much better equipped at handling these tasks. It can get quite technical, let's not go into it, but it's a good thing. It's not something you need. It definitely helps, but keep in mind that you do see differences. So on that, we're talking about like the GPU, is that with the Studio version, you also get Hevc, or commonly known H.265 video decoding on the program if you have the Studio version. This is going to come in really handy if you've picked up some of these new cameras that have been coming out, like the Sony a7S III or the Canon R5 and R6 that do use that codec. Because if you've ever used that codec before in editing, you know that it just handles like a pig. It is shockingly terribly hard to edit. You're going to be using proxies, but if you have the Studio version, well, it's going to decode and it's going to be a lot easier to use. So if you are someone that does rely heavily on those newer cameras and you do find that you're using the H.265 codec, then potentially, yeah, if you're shooting a lot of videos that way and you have a lot of clients, then yeah, it's probably going to be really beneficial to you. I don't really use it because it is such a pig to edit with, so it's not a big deal. But those are the two big ones, performance wise. The rest comes down to sort of workflow. So performance wise, it definitely helps going to Studio. You're going to get better performance. It is a bit night and day. But as someone who ran the free version for a while, it's not that big of a deal. You don't really need to do it. If you are someone that plans on editing in resolutions higher than ultra high definition, so 4K, and in frame rates higher than 60, I'm not quite sure where that sort of market is, but if you are someone that does need to do that, you do need to upgrade to the Studio version. The free version is limited to 4K UHD and 60 frames a second for the timeline spec. That is the real big one right there. So if you want to MKBHD it and do 8K videos, yeah, it's not going to work. So you're going to need to pay for that Studio version. But I feel like the majority of us out there don't do stuff like that. I myself edit in a 4K timeline at 23 by 976 frames a second. That's how I edit. that works fine. And I feel like a lot of people out there, wedding videographers, all that, are probably going to stick to something pretty similar. So you don't need to go to the studio version in order to do that, so don't. Lastly, talking about the specs there, is if you do a lot of high dynamic range, so HDR editing, if that is part of your workflow, you do need to go to studio for that, so you will need to pay for that upgrade. So as you can see here, there's a bit of a theme. So for the higher end productions, we're talking higher than 4K resolution, we're talking HDR, high dynamic range, you know, big video files. These are the sorts of things you find in a high-end production sort of workflow. These are things you pay for the program. Now, one would assume that if you are doing that sort of workflow, you've got enough clients in that you're not really worrying about the price of a, you know, a $400 bit of software. You're just that's gonna be a no-brainer. So you know who you are if that's the case. Now, yes, there are definitely other differences between the two. They're sort of here and there. Like the studio version has a lot more effects built in that you can access, and you can find them when you're on the free version, and it will tell you that this, you know, particular effect is in the paid version of Davinci Resolve 16. You cannot use it. Are these effects needed for everyday workflow? No, not at all. There's some cool ones in there, like face refinement, which sort of smooths out faces. That's kind of cool. 3D tracking, that's something that's in there as well that you can't do. There's a couple of like sort of digital effects in terms of blurring and stuff like that. But again, as far as I'm aware, like I jump back and forth for my tutorials sometimes on the free version and that, you can pretty much get away with everything in the free version. All the stuff that comes in the paid version, the studio version, is sort of like icing on the cake. You don't need it, but when you see it, it's kind of cool, you know, but you don't need it. So yeah, that's a little breakdown. I hope it kind of cleared it up. I know everyone sort of wonders about sort of the performance and stuff of studio versus the free version. And yeah, that's why I started with that, and hopefully that broke it down easily enough for you to understand. As far as I'm aware, like watching this video, you know, right? You'll know once you've watched this video if you need to upgrade to studio. I personally don't recommend it for the majority of people. If you want to check out the studio version, there is a link down below. It is an affiliate link if you want to check it out. But yeah, I still don't recommend the majority of you upgrade. There is no real reason to do it, other than the fact that sometimes my tutorials use paid features, and that's my bad, because when you're on the studio version, it's kind of hard to find them because some of those effects are just randomly only for the studio software. But anyway, guys, that's just a quick video from me, hopefully clearing this up for you guys and making the decision a little bit easier. If you have more questions about the two softwares, more specifics, drop them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as I can. But yeah, don't upgrade unless you really need that higher end production workflow. Anyway, until the next video, guys, see ya.